Thank you for that moment of silence. We intended at 11 a.m. when we started the community impact game. We started with a minute of silence, and then we started the Food Technology Guild with a minute of silence, and now here, and it is just yeah, there's so much. It's so clear the why that threads everybody together. You know, the shared emotion about this moment, and just starting there and acknowledging this crazy world, and acknowledging like, you know, what we're about as a sound technology guild is like everybody walking each other home. You know, this healing journey that can come through sound. And what's so clear to us and everyone, you know, everyone that watches this, is that there's, you know, the heart of the collective is bleeding right now, and it's beating as one, and it is like there is a deepest open wound of the collective trauma of, you know, this like racism, deep racism, social injustice, like the slavery, the dominance, the all of these things that are coming to the surface, and we so need to return to community here, and so need to return to these like healing therapies we're talking about. And I'm so glad we started with sound. You know, I'm so glad. Like it's every time we talk about the game, which we're talking about you, Shane, like multiple times a day, as we talk about like this as an example, like, you know, we keep on speaking the words, you know, new crystal ball company, a one for one model, like the Tom shoes of crystal balls, a robotic arm that will like wake you up in the morning, and that get distributed to like schools and hospitals and the VA, etc. Like it's a beautiful synthesis already for us to like speak about what you're holding here, and what the Sound Technology Guild is like intending at. And so I think Amanda may join us today. She left a voice note with me yesterday that I replied to her about like her plans to take synesthesia forward. And I heard your note there, Shane, about like to what extent. There's Amanda right now, right on cue, Amanda. That was magic. I was just speaking. Amanda's about to. I was speaking about the voice note that you left yesterday, Amanda. It's a big welcome to you. And I think the, the the to answer your question, Shane and Amanda, is these are like two separate projects that come out of the Sound Technology Guild, but they're deeply like complementary. So I think you guys being in this guild together, where you can like really look at how could synesthesia and all of the research that is being, you know, being led by Amanda and UC Santa Barbara, how that can come support what you're proposing to them.
Yeah, I mean, my take to Sound Helix is essentially that this would be kind of like the nesting egg for a lot of projects. That's what I've always seen it as, at least, you know, moving from iteration to iteration of the varying, you know, from Shamanka to Fractal Robotics to Sound Helix, the Helix Temple, and all this kind of stuff. You know, the journey getting to Sound Helix was kind of always attempting to thread the needle in figuring out like, okay, you know, which one to start first, and then ultimately, you know, how does the one, you know, help fund the many. And this is where, as I really started to do more of the numbers, this is ultimately kind of what I came to realize was like, oh, now Sound Helix would be the nexus, like, of how that is a given proven model that will never go away. Like, there's always going to be a market for crystal ball players, in terms of like, there's always going to be people wanting to buy bowls. Like, that's a sensation that cannot be removed from the market. Like, even if all the other projects failed, like Sound Helix would still be able to breathe, given, you know, even if we only could do like $1 million in sales per year, you know, it's like, it still would generate revenue regardless of whatever financial impact that economy would have between between all the pieces. So this is kind of why, as I started to realize kind of like the variables, I was like, no, we need to start this one first. So and this was even long before like any of the other people that I've met in the field. I was like, oh, cool, you're doing stuff that I totally would want to give you money for. So but yeah, and that was kind of my conversation piece with when we were kind of going back and forth on WhatsApp was to discuss, like if it makes sense to pitch them together, or because I definitely see them as complementary projects. And Amanda and I have had long conversations about how they would integrate with each other over time. But in terms of funding, if it makes more sense to, and that's kind of where I'm still slightly on the boat or on the fence about, is like whether to fully incorporate them together to get funding together, or to separate them as projects. So then at least from an investor standpoint, it's like, oh, okay, cool. This idea I get, this idea I don't get, rather than have both of them to be together and then one of them potentially being like, I don't get it, so no, I'm not going to get the other piece. So, but that's just me. So that's kind of where I'm at in it.
Beautiful, Shane, and I think with that, welcome Amanda, and I'd love to pick up the conversation that with the voice note and where you're at, and have a.
Is Amanda still in the group?
Oh yeah, I think Amanda, you would. She's just dropped off. Actually, she was here. So
yeah.
Let me wait on that then. So as we think about, like, Shane, you were literally at the forefront, the crest of the wave. You were the first Sherpa, and Andrea, you're the first founding member of the Sound Technology Guild. So you're the first to get to Blossom stage. And so now Blossom stage is all about, like, how do we cross-pollinate? So how do we take what we've got with Sound Helix and what else is going on with the sound ecosystem? So the Sound Alliance obviously being one. Thank you, Andrea, so much for representing that here and being part of that and connecting the dots. The question now is, how can we be of greater service so that when we get on Friday, Shane, and do the presentation of the collective Blossom to that group, how can we kind of get to that next milestone where it's clear what the asks are of people within the network, and it might be actually that the asks are like, let's get through to harvest stage, and like what we would like to do is all pull our networks of funders, and like we want to fundraise this particular way. That's like the drilling down that's now happening in the Blossom stage, and so that's what we'd invite. And Amanda, big welcome. What I was just saying is just a response. Can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Hey, there you are.
Yes, we can.
Oh, great. Yeah, I had to uninstall and reinstall Zoom because of the update, because they're getting so fancy now that everyone's using Zoom every day on the planet. Okay, but thanks for your patience and sorry for being late. And yes, continue.
Well, firstly, I just want to say well done over the weekend. I saw you were doing all sorts of magic over the weekend, and just you've got such a groupie in us here. So, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So do you want to just raise what you shared, Amanda, on the conversation about on the voice note yesterday, with like how you and Jonathan intend to kind of synthesize this synesthesia project into something that we can go forward from this point?
Yeah. So the conference that we participated in this weekend is a good example of the kind of organizations and academic institutions that could really help to expand and evolve the research that we could fold into the development of sound experiences that could be in collaboration with Shane and the Unified Planet organization. And so thinking through like the structure of how all these organizations could work together, I have some ideas. And yeah, I basically just thought it'd be fun to kind of transparently explore all of the different ways that we could plug into each other. So like this organization did a really good job. It's a conference that brought together Buddhism and neuroscience and consciousness research and psychological research. And so the immersive sound experience that I offered was basically to bring that audience, which is there was about 170 people from the conference that came, and to kind of guide us through a musical experience of meta awareness. So I was like using all the or kind of like using the voice as the anchor and then expanding it outwards with harmony and with the delay effect to kind of imply this multiplicity of selves that we can then sort of like expand our own awareness, and like connecting with nature, all the nature sounds to kind of help facilitate the feeling of merging with our environment and universe. But anyway, I'm at the beginning of the process of developing this kind of music, but I really am excited to work with academic institutions to do real research. And so Unified Planet, which I see could be an incubator for this project. And because we have like formed a company a few years ago that the investors are friends and close allies with, I think, people who like have been donating and funding and investing in consciousness expanding projects for a while, that it would be a great excitement for them, having sort of already supported, to know that there's an incubator that's really like Unified Planet that could help support and bring in structure and funding, and like that basically whatever we could bring in funding wise, there'd be a percentage that would go to the Unified Planet, and however you guys want to distribute those funds to continue developing other projects, that we could form a co-op and be able to collaborate and share resources and be able to basically evolve together as a holacracy of entities and organizations. And it also protects all of the academic institutions, because the main if you can kind of separate the art from the science, but they still are able to collaborate, then we can be as kind of open-minded about like applying different research to projects and just exploring and iterating it and really like innovating and evolving musical artistic projects that can provide health in a variety of different ways, in a variety of different categories. So like when we go to the medical side of, like, if the Sound for Health is sort of appealing to the medical industry, then them having partnerships, or like the artistic developers that might be for Sound for Health having partnerships with like research institutions that are embedded into academic institutions, that there's a lot of trust that comes with that, and medical groups would, and hospitals and health organizations would be more able to just say yes to things like that. So an example is like Jonathan's Meta Lab, which is through UCSB can actually accept grants, which I didn't know until yesterday. I was trying to figure out how like his organization could collaborate with like Shane's and mine, and whoever else ends up like developing projects that wants to sort of integrate consciousness research or research on vibration or research on different technologies that we would be using to like help entrain brains into slower brainwave states and to sort of increase psychological benefits and potentially even physiological benefits. Like, how can we all sort of work together? Well, his is able to accept grants from like the Templeton Foundation has given MetaLab a lot of grants, and they have a pretty like as a sponsor. And so I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Templeton Foundation, but they're like kind of a good example of an organization that's pretty open-minded, like pouring funds into lots of different kinds of research. And so MetaLab or any other research labs can accept grants like that. And so like a portion of the funding could go towards a grant, and then a portion of the funding could go towards the artistic development, which like I have kind of a team of people that I could be designing a series of experiences, and we have like kind of an open, however many experiences we could do. That's pretty open. We also can organize online conferences because it's so much easier these days with everything being online. It's to have amazing people be at these sort of symposiums and to be able to have the development process of these immersive sound experiences be an iterative, open process. And then I feel like a lot of different potential projects can just bloom and blossom from that structure of just like providing sort of iterating and developing projects, and also like having conferences to bring in more of the right kind of crowds and interest and funding towards the projects, and then to be able to like collaborate with different organizations and just keep building and building and building something. So yeah, those are some thoughts. I'm kind of rambling because I'm not quite sure where everyone's at as far as like details that they're interested in. If you want to guide me in asking questions, that's just like the bare sort of what I've been thinking of recently.
Yeah, few thoughts there, Amanda. One, it's so on point about how we're thinking about this. So just picking up one thread, for example, Templeton Foundation. I know them very well. My grandfather, my adopted grandfather, won the Templeton Prize, which is the world's largest prize, cash prize. It's they call it the Nobel Prize for Religion. His name was
Wow.
Rabbi. So Jim Pitofsky is the managing director of Templeton Foundation and runs strategic alliances. I went to the Vatican, did this project on science and religion with him at the Vatican, and so he was exactly one of the people that I was planning to invite to the harvest stage. So just connecting dots, like I had in my mind the Templeton Foundation, the Rockefeller Foundation. There's a few different foundations that we would like to get representation when we go to harvest, because what we're talking about is right within their boat of like kind of what they fund, and awesome that Jonathan can take those kind of grants in. Partly what we're thinking is that the Unified Planet can be a place that can take in grants as well, and initially through Savannah Foundation as a fiscal sponsor for particular projects. But that we need to like work out and design. But as the Unified Planet becomes a co-op, answering your next kind of point that you raised, which was like how does the kind of how does like the value exchange work with what Unified Planet is doing in the case of synesthesia? And what we would propose is that synesthesia as a company would become a member of that co-op. In doing so, you would, any money that gets raised through the Unified Planet, 10% of that money goes into the back into the pot, the commons pot of everybody that's participated in the sound game. And what that money does is give everybody that's earned stars since the seed stage the ability to convert that money into dollars. And so it's a way,
Yeah.
it's like think of it as like tithing is our experiment that we're running.
Yes. 10% was the number we were talking about with Jonathan. So I'm glad that that's feels good. And yeah, that would be amazing. Actually, I have some kind of exciting news about the name of it. So it wouldn't synesthetics is like imagine that as more of like an album that's focused on like all the musical techniques to create synesthesia, and there's like a whole, there could even be multiple albums, different kinds of synesthesia. There's a lot. But we realized, because I did a project called Andromeda, which is like the galaxy, but also play on the words of meta. And Jonathan's lab is called Meta Lab, and Shane's, he has an organization called Spirit Medicine. And then we performed together at a place called, in, what was it, Meta? It was like a place called the Meta thing. So anyway, we were thinking about a name that would be easier for people to say, and I'm sort of restructuring the LLC that I had made before from Atom and Ava. We're going to call it Meta Music now, because that's just a very kind of like straightforward way of really describing the whole genre of these kinds of sound experiences. But just to save you from having to say synesthesia over and over again, because I know it's kind of a tongue full, but yeah, so that's kind of the announcement is Meta Music.
about it. That sounds so good. I love meta music.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's very fitting for these times, and it's easy to say and easy to remember. Well done.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Like, just awesome for us to, just as we're talking about the Sound Technology Guild, hey, there's two projects, Sound Helix and Meta Music. They're collaborating. They're collaborating in these ways. This is what they're doing. Just perfect because we can kind of pool our efforts there. The other thing, Amanda, as you think about meta music, what we're as a co-op, what we're intending is that you could actually use your equity as an instrument within stars. So this is the first time I've talked about this, but I've envisioned it for a long time, which is you as Meta Music as a company or Sound Helix, for example, can go and say that we will provide this amount of equity in exchange for people's stars, and you can use that as a way to essentially as like an equity currency where people can be earning stars based on like the value that's being created. So there's a lot here that I can know it's a potential rabbit hole, but we're thinking hard about like how do we create essentially like cooperative networks where you have an instrument to basically like incentivize this whole ecosystem of everybody that's playing the game to really demonstrate the kind of Aikido move on competition, which is that we can prove that cooperating within networks of networks, communities of communities, gives unfair competitive advantage. Basically, we want to prove that cooperation outperforms competition, and so this is we will be thinking of the like tools and infrastructure we can enable as Unified Planet for you to offer that to this ecosystem.
Yeah, I agree with there being a way to spend using the sort of same um, kinds of. I'm still kind of new to the whole the Bitcoin and the coin system, but I do believe that like it'll take time for that to really like hold its value. But doing sort of exchanges within the ecosystem, yeah, totally, that makes sense. I have a question too. I don't know if that was the right time, but my question, yeah, let me know.
Go ahead.
How, so if there is another organization that is formed a co-op that wants to make sound their like primary offering, like wants to incubate projects, could the structure that we're creating right now be able to like also sort of work, yeah, like how could it work where um would it be exclusive that it would be within this incubator, or is there a way to sort of like, how do you see being able to collaborate with other people who want to support, organizations who want to support?
So we are like on the spectrum of collaboration and seeing everybody as on the same team and partnering. We're like way over there. So our intention is like we need to move really fast. We need to move a shitload of capital, and we need to like change that. We've got our job cut out to do for the next decade. So we are not interested in competing with other like accelerators networks. What we're interested in is them joining this, like them being part of this co-op if it makes sense for them to be part of the co-op, and for us, like we don't by any means want to put any barriers, like particularly not IP crap that most people deal with that holds back so much innovation. Our piece is like we are here to accelerate and incubate the community solutions that come through the Unified Planet. And if you as like Meta Music or Sound Helix wanted to join another accelerator, like totally cool. Like, and if you would like to invite that accelerator to come and be a member of the Sound Alliance, totally cool. It's like the energy of the Sound Alliance is going to come from yourselves, and the Sound Technology Guild is going to come from yourselves to take it forward. So we're really here to support that, and we're going to be scaling our team here so that we can like make as many partnerships with other like we would like to do a wrap up of as many of the accelerators, impact orientated accelerators and incubators as possible, so that ultimately the unified planet could be the biggest kind of community ecosystem of solutions.
So you're going to be like a meta co-op of co-ops?
Basically, that's what it is. So like the one of the things you'll see is like what the unified planet is a fractal truth. Like it's a fractal, like it's a system that we know really works. Like there's Mondragon in Basque Country in Spain, for example, which is a co-op model, and it's like one of the biggest, frankly, corporations in Spain, but it's like everybody that works there owns it. And so what we're seeing is that the unified planet, every single person that plays the game will end up through stars, which is the currency of ownership of the co-op. They will be like co-owners of the unified planet. And our goal, just in all transparency, is I'm personally not going to stop until we have 1 billion co-owners by 2030. Like that's in transparency, that's like what we're aiming towards. Is like we want to have the largest network of like the unified planet. It will be once we reach like a critical mass of people. But we start system by system, like like community by community, and that's this decade's going to be a hell of a roller coaster.
A heaven of a roller coaster.
A heaven of there you go. There you go.
Yeah. So yeah, invite them in. I would love to know more about this co-op and have a conversation with them about what we're doing and see where the synergy is, and pull them into the fold, because the more hearts and minds that we can bring in, the better.
Yeah, and I feel like all the different organizations are holding different pieces, of the puzzle, like you said, and it's a beautiful approach, and I'm really proud to be affiliated with you guys, knowing that that's your plan. And I do think it's possible. It's extremely courageous to have that intention, and if anyone can hold that, it's you guys, and
you.
That's beautiful. No, I just, as far as like just your kind of, you embody that, like let's all play together and sort of allow for each other's gifts to emerge and to synergize. So I do, like, I'm starting to already think of like how what might seem like competitive energies could actually just alchemize, and like the community that I'm talking about could really provide a venue for a lot of these projects to be able to iterate and hold retreats, and it could be a space. There could be a lot of places that become venues for these collaborations to take place in real time as well. So that's one thought. But anyway, we can talk.
Venues, what we want to do is enable those venues to have a exchange model that they don't need to set up, that they could, for example, accept people's stars for hosting there, and then they can then go and exchange those stars out. And so there's a currency model that is basically a trusted, honest currency that can empower these communities. But the game is only a month old, so we've got a ton of infrastructure to build, and we need to raise substantial funding. But we're getting to a point where we can go to, like, I know a bunch of billionaires and say, look what we've done with no funding. Look what we can do is if we actually, like, I can totally see that we're going to get flooded with capital once we prove that this is effective way of funding like systemic solutions. And so that's like the first thing, is just like, how do we prove that and prove it in the micro? Because every one of these games is a place to test macroeconomic changes and macro systemic change in the micro, like through alliances and guilds.
Yeah, Rick Doblin's talk, I think I might have mentioned this before, but his structure for like doing for the Maps's growth over time could be a really good template for us to follow, as far as like having they're able to have kind of limitless exploration of the research that would be relevant for what they're currently working on, through having a nonprofit organization that's able to initiate studies, and then they have a for-profit, or for the benefit of the public organization that's a long-term vision that's able to generate profit over time that can continue to go into the nonprofit so that it's sustainable. And so people who are funding in the beginning are told, that and they're able to bring in millions of dollars, like that, they're not going to be asked for money forever. That there's ultimately there's a business model that's going to be able to bring in funding and keep it sustainable. So that could be a good model for this kind of work. Anyway.
Well, it's funny enough. It's super simple. So Savannah Foundation, super similar. Savannah Foundation is a 501c3 that we have three pillars in our mandate with with the like with our foundational documentation, and that is number one. It's advocacy around systems change, around moving us towards a thriving civilization for all life. Number two, it's the technology stack. So it's all of the tools and technologies. That's why Savannah has spent 2 years gathering together 20 open source digital technologies, and we're going to continue to like plug together all these digital technologies. And the third piece is funding. So we can be a fiscal sponsor for community solutions. And so in a similar way as MAPS is structured, where there's a foundation can go and fund companies to do particular research projects, is very similar structure where Savannah Foundation can move into that. And bear in mind, Savannah Foundation hasn't yet raised any external funding. It's just been kind of set up as a, like finding what is ours to do in the small scale. But we can provide that. And the final thought there is Rick Doblin. We're going to be doing a game on accelerating psychedelic research and psychedelic integration. We've got a number of games going first. So we're like next week we're doing a game on the games. We're doing the unanimous charter game, and then we move to reimagining capitalism. Then we go to land stewardship, then humanizing trust, then racial justice, and then probably it will be like psychedelics for health or psychedelics for transformation. And something Rick spoke at the 2030 event in Davos and spoke for like 3-4 minutes about the roadmap for psychedelic integration. And he gave this 10-year plan, speaking as himself in 2030, about the way psychedelics will transform society. And so we want to take that kind of notion into the game and bring together the 20 best leaders of the psychedelic transformation community into a game. And you can, of course, already see how that game, the community impact game, the Sound for Health game, are all going to be intersecting together. And that's the intention, is that we're stacking them together. So hope that.
Very cool. Thank you.
So Shane, how does that the note we discussed, though, because we've been doing some voice notes between myself and Amanda and you, myself and you, Shane. How does that feel as like Sound Helix and Meta Music as a project? Like, do we want to think through? Because what I'd suggest is when it comes to Friday, we just present the two as the two projects of the guild.
Yeah, I mean, I think them being presented together as the projects is one thing. Whether they get funded together is another. I think they're not necessarily mutually exclusive ideas. It's just more so of how we want to approach the prospects of, because I could see Sound Helix appealing to some investors and Meta Music appealing to others. And not that I'm for or against them being lumped together, more so just I think one coming from because Meta Music, at least from the scope of what I can understand of it, is going to be more of an experiential component. I mean, combined with all the research and stuff that is that it's going to help create, and then Sound Helix will be kind of more of a product distribution line that will have as a secondary process experiential initiatives that are funded through it. But again, I'm not necessarily left or right for whatever whatever fits best. I'll go with.
Just a word on that. I think we're going to have 30 minutes on Friday for the Collective Blossom. I would suggest we split that into two presentations, Sound Helix and Meta Music. I just think it's going to be simplest because
Yeah.
and in the crossover we talk about the like how you're collaborating.
Yeah.
You know, you're part of the same cohort, but you're separate organizations.
Yeah. I could see that being like maybe 12 minutes, and then 5 minutes.
Something like that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because it'd be like 12 to present each project, and then 5 minutes to talk about the synergy between how the projects work together.
Yeah, even potentially
or just like 10 and 10, whichever, you know, whatever.
Shorter. Like I'm thinking like max 8-minute presentations so that we have space for the collective intelligence of others to speak.
Yeah.
So you do 8 minutes, Amanda did 8 minutes, you know, we then have 14 minutes left, provided we're on time, 14 minutes left for conversation about those two. But just like getting super tight on time, and making sure that we've got enough to fit each project in. I think because we want that cross pollination of everybody we bring together, and we also, if you have specific people that you think can add value to either Meta Music or Sound Helix, to invite them in on, you know, the calendar invites in your calendar. You can invite others there. So it's, you know, we're meeting at 11 a.m. from 11 till 12:30. We're having the collective blossom. So feel free to add people that could be contributors.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'll have to think about that. People who could potentially jump on the call.
Sure. And Andrea, question for you as the Sherpa of the Alliance. You know, what we're seeing is that the Alliance is like the train station to support guilds. And so over time, where we're seeing is like the council that can make up each alliance could actually be the kind of legitimacy needed to distribute funding through the guilds. And so what we're thinking, it's great to have you here. And I think one thing you could just keep an eye on is like the initiatives of like Sound Helix and Metasound. How can that support what how can the alliance efforts kind of be complementary to those two organizations in the form of the Science of Sound Guild, Science of Sound Matrix, in the form of like comic
like the education aspects to like kind of like round it out, even though we have the academics and research, but I know each one of them has their own story that comes into play. But I think there is that, I mean, I saw with Amanda what she had sent me on one of the research projects or that was done. I mean, the resonance project was amazing on what was, and that isn't even out into the field. Most people don't even know about that.
Yeah. Well, that's the perfect thing as you think about the Science of Sound matrix, Andrea, and like that content that we're there. The guilds are actually going to provide a way for you to like get those research projects in as well and profile them. So you know, the way we're seeing it is like a train station. You're like the place where these trains come to refuel. And so like, what do resources look like to flow into the sound ecosystem? Well, it looks like capital, it looks like awareness, like memes and like educational content. It looks like access to other sound practitioners, so that when Meta Music goes to market, the Sound Alliance can go and showcase this to like sound practitioners all over the world. So there's an instant access to a network of practitioners for what Amanda and Jonathan are leading.
And also like in hospitals and healthcare systems, like I can already see where this can be sprinkled in different arenas so easily because of the research that's already behind what Amanda's already done.
Exactly.
Which is what everyone's always looking for, is what are the case studies behind what has been done in the marketplace.
Exactly that.
Right. And the exciting thing to pick up on what you're putting down is that Shane has like a major key, like there's some completely untapped research on the actual effects of crystal bowls and the actual like brain entrainment of the intermodulations that happen when you hit a gong. And like there's just such little research out there that we could basically pioneer a lot of that could be a foundational for sound healers to be able to say, look at this data, and to like, yeah. Anyway, so I think what Shane and I could potentially do this week is just get really clear on the studies that would um, that we could do together, and like what it would cost and how, and we could spreadsheet that um, together. That was just a thought that I had as far as how we could synergize and maybe spend some time on the Friday call talking about the different studies that we could do with crystal bowls and gongs.
I think the other piece too around having a robotic arm playing a crystal bowl when it comes to, and this would be phase 2 of the initiatives, to getting more research that's viably measurable and scientific, is that it removes a lot of the variables that the scientific community could then use as like, oh, you know, it wasn't at the right speed, or what, you know, like it just removes some of the kind of human imperfection from, you know, keeping, and on top of that, when it really comes down to it, you know, like if we want to do maximum exposure of a petri dish, you know, frequencies exposed, you know, like having to pay a sound healer for an hour or 2 hours or 5 hours or 10 hours or however long of exposure we want, to create some level of you know, like our red blood cells, you know, exposed. Can we actually do exposure levels to the level of consistency and repeatableness that is required for the scientific method, without, you know, kind of creating any type of loopholes that the scientific community could be like, you know, to upend the work. So
Right. And to just fully justify like why having the actual physical bowl in your room versus just coming through your headphones, the sounds of crystal bowls, is imperative. And just having that like actual data is going to be huge.
Yeah. Because I could also see like, I mean, I would be curious, and yeah, because that's the other thing too, is like there is, and I don't know if there is any research that's been done on it, but I would be curious to see what level of research is around, like if we exposed a cell culture of the same red blood cells to a 256 hertz frequency from a crystal bowl versus, because, you know, basically to have two isolation control groups, one room where the red blood cells are exposed to 256 hertz from crystal, 256 hertz from transducers, from speakers, and then you know, even maybe 256 hertz consistently from like metal gongs, you know, so then that way you can show, you know, there might not be any difference in terms of the effect, but at least from, you know, down to a molecular level, but to still be able to prove that like, okay, cool, actually all the people who say that crystals and gongs and speakers are like, you know, better or worse than the other, okay, well, we can actually like put that to rest finally, you know, because like based off of the research, it's like it actually doesn't do anything in terms of physical interaction and how it changes the molecular structures. But if there is actual, because that's the other side of it too, is like if there is actual noticeable differences, then we should be able to hopefully be able to fund that research, because I would love to actually see, you know, down to the molecular level, what's going on within the red blood cells over extended exposure to, and then I would also be curious too, like to look at microbiomes and seeing how they exposed to specific cell or specific frequencies and specific cultures from crystal bowls, from gongs, if there's a level of organization in terms of cellular repair, cellular reconstruction, and all of this kind of stuff. If they operate, you know, if there's a level of consistency, that there's more cohesiveness in crystal, or there's more cohesiveness in metal, and so forth and so on. I could sit around and nerd out about this shit for hours, so I'll leave it at that. But yeah, so there's definitely a lot of impact, I think, that we could do, being able to have not only sound helix, but like the other variables, and then how we can then build that bridge into what Amanda's doing on her side, especially from the research side. So
let's piece all of that together. I guess you guys can work offline, or we'll have an hour, every day over the next few days, just to really have a drop in on that and get everyone's ducks in a row, so we can feel good on the lead in into Friday. How does that sound?
Yeah. I think, Shane, let's set up a meeting with Jonathan, and
sure.
you could just brainstorm all the different things you really want to see, and he'll be able to at least offer what we can potentially do, and we can refine it from there.
Yeah, that's totally fine. And then Andrea, I don't know if that would be of interest to you to drop in on, especially coming from the health medical side. If there's anything you could think of specifically, in terms of research ideas of other things that we might either be overlooking or that would be of valuable interest to health insurance companies or in the health field, that would benefit.
If we look at like the major factors of like cancer, heart disease, like kind of the big four, any type of research that is in those areas is always, like, even from an insurance perspective, is huge.
Okay.
So and knowing that cancer is really a dissonant structure, and so we're creating more resonance.
Andrea, do you mind sharing with me your background in the medical? You're in the medical field?
I grew up around hospitals being built, and so some of the biggest hospitals I've been around since I was a child. So architectural and engineering, and then also I worked for 12 years in brokerage for healthcare. And so hospitals and healthcare systems. So when newer modalities came out, I would write in order to get underwriters to look at it a different way. Mm-hmm. So, and then I've done a lot of research because of even my own health conditions that I used sound in order to heal. And then one of my mentors that passed away was really into sound research. And so I was learning before he passed away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think what we could do, I could ask Jonathan if he could just straight up join us on our call tomorrow, and we could really get to the nitty. It might be like there might be some limitations as far as like the Meta Lab is focused on psychological research, and also for good reason, kind of staying away from the physiological or like cancer, like diseases, because it can get pretty hairy pretty quickly as far as like making claims about benefits for very serious things that people are dealing with. Doesn't mean that we can't do studies that learn things that could point to that direction.
It's like potentials,
right? Yeah,
like the potentiality of things versus I'm going to cure or diagnose,
right? So like
a different format to it.
Yeah, so like their machinery or their laboratory equipment is more related to like heart and brain activity. But I mean, he knows a lot of different people as far as being able to measure blood cells potentially. That could be something of value in inflammation or physiological changes. We definitely have Alan Macy on board, who's a brilliant engineer of these kinds of devices. He developed something that can measure when you have goosebumps. It's called a pyro erecta something. Silly name, but so like when your hairs on your arm go up. And he's also developed the like main laboratory equipment that a lot of labs use for EEGs, and also it'd be amazing if he could join us on a call maybe on like Wednesday or Thursday, once we kind of like talk things through with Jonathan. And so we could just like have those conversations be something that we're all participating, and I don't know if that's interesting.
I think that's great. If we could get him just to be on the call tomorrow,
Cool.
That's a great way for our time to be spent, I believe. I think David Gibson could be a really good resource in this regard too. I know he's gone.
Yeah, I talked to him last week. I think he has so much research, which all of us know, that's available on certain disease states and organ health. So I know that
Some of that, or how did that feel?
we just had I hadn't talked to him, so it was like the first time having a conversation with him. So I found out more about the foundation and everything he does, but the way that the genome, it seems like it's more open source and is looking for more, I think, collaboration in general.
Okay, cool.
But I think it's also, I think, when we're looking at sound in health, it's like we're still learning about so many different things, and we all have different puzzle pieces that we're bringing together. So the more that we can look at that, then more people will be able to look at this as a viable option going forward more often than choosing, regular allopathic models.
Yeah.
But he's well connected. I mean, he's very well connected, and so many different foundations. I mean, we're not the first ones to be in sound. We're learning off of, other people and standing on their shoulders.
Yeah,
Which is
and
what we're
definitely
supposed to
don't
do.
reinvent the wheel, right? Like if he already has a lot of it just sitting there, we can just
Yeah,
use that resource.
yeah.
Very good. Well, see if Jonathan can make that call, Amanda, and let's do it at this time tomorrow.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you guys for everything. Thanks for all the support and excitement, and for the like consistency, which is really sometimes the thing that just loses its steam and projects don't happen because there's a sense of momentum that gets diffused. And I really appreciate the way that the momentum has continued for the past few weeks, and your energy and presence has been so reliable throughout. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. It feels so good what we're all doing as a team. And I had the perspective of seeing what's happening in food, and then also seeing what we've kickstarted with community today and all the synergy in between. I think you can just feel the momentum of this thing building.
Very cool. And thank you, Brian, over there. I see you, man. I see you on each of these calls, and yeah, I know you're just being like the humble monk in the background, but I know you're putting a lot of energy towards just the overall vision and well-being of this project. So thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. I appreciate you.
All right.
Excuse me there. I needed to nourish myself.
Come on. You can do 40 food. Keep moving.
That's the spirit.
I'm just gonna give you an IV drip or something for over here.
That's what Gunter said. I think we need, when the things open up, we'll have an IV station downstairs.
You should.
Full of we're gonna hack talk about the out game. We need to be operating as planetary Navy SEALs for peace. We'll be, yeah.
Well, it's about transition time. Are we all? I think it's really all of us.
Mm-hmm.
So we can kind of keep moving.
Yeah. So next we're moving on to the Sound Portal Guild. So I'm sure in moments that will come up. I just got this notification. Does anyone feel really weird? Is this the case where you guys are? We have a curfew here. I've never lived in a place with a curfew before, and it's
We have a curfew in Omaha as well, because we had someone that got killed, in the area I used to live at. So they changed things.
Yeah, we're getting these emergency alerts that I don't think it's cool.
Oh, really?
Case where you guys are you have a
Hey, brother.
Hey, Emil.
Welcome, Emil.
Hey, aloha. I was just sorting out other end. I was hearing the Facebook Live and then tuning in here. Okay, let me mute one of these.
You mean portals within portals?
Portals within portals. Yeah, it's the first time you ever held a mirror up to a mirror and you saw the infinite of that. I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
In our first, it feels like an age ago when we did the presentation to the World Economic Forum. on after the seed stage, and I just laughed because it was one of those things that totally was not planned. You know how a magician says what they're going to do before the magic trick? Often that's one of the magic tricks. It was like I'd started that session with we're gonna have portals within portals within portals today, because it was like presenting upstairs and then looping downstairs to the dinner portal and then talking about the like what we had done, and then saying that up front and then getting to the page where we were like live streaming the page to this infinite tunnel saying you're live on the show exclamation mark, and this like endless portal into
It was insane.
into
It was like a billion Lucians just going. Brrrr.
and
We were downstairs too. We're all like, "Oh my god, he did it!
he's in this
He's gone into the portals.
he's been swallowed up by the portals." It's so funny. It's like that.
I remember seeing a quick snap of that image too on the computer. It's like, whoa.
Yeah.
Did I send you? I've got the thing. I think that's actually going to be a kind of funny feature piece because that image of it going all the way down with everybody's faces, and then I just calmly say well, that's a lot of portals. So, Serena, welcome.
Hi.
How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
We are we're feeling the feelings today. You know, we've been on since 10:30.
Oh, wow.
And we're feeling the feelings from this weekend, and just like the potency of these moments. We've had a moment of silence to begin each, just for us to reflect on the situation in our streets, in our communities, George Floyd, and just like the tragedy of it. And so maybe what we could do, Serena, is have that moment of silence, and then after a minute, if you could, thank you, Amanda, so much.
Thank you, Amanda.
But you're welcome on the Alliance conversation, which is in an hour if you have the time, but no worries if not. But thank you so much, and we'll see you tomorrow. But
Moment of silence, and then
yeah, Serena, if we have a moment of silence followed by whatever sound you would like to bring us through, that would be really special.
Sure.
Thank you. We'll just mute ourselves and have a minute of silence.
minutes now.
Yeah, I'm playing my Shruti. This mantra invokes all the elements and also the universal activation of the collective as well as the collective in the individual. Ramadasa Sase Soham 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 Sase Soham.
Thank you so much, Serena. I look forward to these nights. So beautiful. Thank you.
My pleasure.
That's the exact nourishment we need after people and ideas in a day. Thank you. That moment of today. Um, and that's one of the invitations as we go into Blossom stage. Southern Technology Guild is that question of how do you as a group um, continue this culture of the in-breath and the out-breath together, the inhale and the exhale, the yin and the yang, the being and the becoming, and invite in these hours for you to like structure that as you see fit, and we will like pay attention and see how you do that and try and thread that into others as like you're the first, you're the first you in the Southern Technology Guild, the first guilds to get to blossom. So by this stage, more and more of the leadership and the direction is coming. We're here to support, and so feel free to structure this as if you want to be doing half of this as yin and deeply connecting into that shared synchronized space. Feel free, and like we're here to support that. So, and the goal, just to recap on that, is for us at 11 a.m. on Friday. We'll present the Sound Portal Guild in that collective blossom.
Hey, Lucian, you're a little quiet for me at least. Is anyone else experiencing that?
Yeah, I've been hearing that today. We need to get a mic system set up here that is an external mic. So is that better?
That's better. Thank you, bro.
Um, so the collective blossom on Friday. The invitation is for us to like take what was presented into like a visual presentation of like, okay, here's where we're at, and here's what we're choosing to focus on to take us into harvest, which is where we start to ask for resources across our shared collective networks, and we put structures in place around what are those resources coming into. So really the intention this week is to synthesize in that 30 minutes, which may be like several presentations in that 30 minutes, but to get to a point where also you can invite people from your network that you think could be helpful as blossom pollinators, as like connecting the dots, and could be potential funders. And the real like funding gathering will happen in the harvest stage in a couple of weeks. And that's where we'll all like pull our networks together and ask everybody who do we know that are funding, you know, innovative solutions around sound. So
Great.
that's the scene, and so over to you, Serena and Emil. I really appreciate you both.
Yeah. So thanks for giving us kind of an overall direction and roadmap. I spent some time over the weekend creating something that's more solar for everyone to look at and also contribute to, so that we can have a presentation ready to go for our Friday meeting, and sort of presentation that we can then go into figuring out exact numbers for things. But I'm hoping that if we can all contribute to this document in different ways, that the sum of our ideas will be able to be articulated in a way that helps us also figure out the steps to go forward. Can all of you guys open this, or do I need to give permission right now?
I need to get permission.
Okay, let me change. I'm so sorry. My Google settings always goes to the most advanced one. So let me just change that really quickly.
That's because you're an advanced being.
I also, for me, get into this. Let me get everyone to editor, copy link, done. Okay, let's see if that works now. Are you guys able to get in?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yes. So I also want everyone to know that what I wrote here was just sort of a brain dump of everything we've been talking about in just more of an organized flow. And I might have missed your name on a concept or idea that you had, but I would love it if you could go in there and riff on the things that we collectively came up with and thought were a good idea. For example, Andrea, I have, the scavenger hunt was something that stemmed from you. So I would love it if we could play around with that and figure out what that would look like from an organizational perspective to make happen. That's kind of down in the middle of these goals. But my point is I think if we can, for Friday, sort of focus on the low-hanging fruit of these goals and really articulate the needs, and then kind of do estimated ranges and cost estimates for the medium and the long-term goals, it would put us into a good position of being able to ask for funding. And if I was a potential investor, that I guess kind of see that there's a roadmap going forward and that there's a plan after the immediate goals. So I would love it if you guys could sort of just take a look at this. Hi, Danielle, I see you now, yay. And add in to this so that we can all contribute together. I have to be very honest with you guys. I am traveling this week. I'm in the middle of the Redwood National Forest currently. So I'm a little bit out of pocket and in pocket. So I wanted to spend time this weekend really trying to get this out so that we could have a good week and set up. So any extra effort and time that everyone can put into this would be awesome. Yes, Danielle, it's in there now.
Thank you, Serena.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got really into the solar this weekend, trying to just get out. And it's obviously not all built out, but it's a skeleton that I think all of us could try to wrap around and summarize. And, some people like the QR code idea. I tried to lace it through everything that we talked about, but there might be things that I'm missing as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Hey, Serena, sorry about that. We lost our internet connection. We're just restarting the router here, so I'm on my phone right now.
The router sounds good, Lucien.
Router. As I said, I said it yesterday. English is spoken by the Queen in the correct way because she's so.
The router, we got the router going.
Makes sense to me, mate.
Yeah, thank you.
Some words will never change, right?
Vitamins, tomatoes.
Yes.
Yeah. But
Okay, so we're reviewing this document that Serena put up, and I checked it out yesterday, and I didn't have any major things to add at the moment. One very interesting thing that came up for me, which you might have read in the email I sent back to Serena, is that I found a company that makes sound playgrounds very much in the vision of what I've been thinking. And actually, I think I'm actually 100% sure, almost 100% sure that they made the installation that I've been referencing in the mission, because I saw a quick video clip of it on one of their promo videos. It's very cool. They have like a map of the world with like hundreds of installations, mostly in the States, but everywhere. It looks like there's 2 in Honolulu, so maybe I'll pop over there and check those out at some point. I'll share that real quick so you can check it out. Man, so many tabs.
You guys might want to check out freenotes.com too.
That's what I'm talking about. Freenotes.
Yeah, David Gibson is friends with that guy.
Oh, cool. So we have possibly a direct link. But they're called, so their website here is called Freenotes Harmony Park, because they make these really cool, I'm not able to, I'm having trouble with going to the chat for some reason. Oh, I can't click on the chat. Well, Freenotes, when that clears up, I'll share it. FreeNotesHarmonyPark.com. And they provide different, here we go now. They provide different kinds of instruments that private or public groups can order. And they have this one instrument that's in a lot of sound healing stores and music shops called the Freenotes sort of xylophone thing almost. And it's a very beautiful instrument. So they make, more sturdy versions of that, it seems, largely, that they put into public spaces and playgrounds. The one thing I noticed about it is that I couldn't find any videos of kids actually just like playing with them, or that you could hear. It seems like they have all these videos that are videos of it, but with different audio going on. And my sense is that like they're not getting a lot of instances where they're like, oh, the kids are like having a good time playing together. It's like or maybe they haven't gotten good audio quality versions of that. But it got me thinking that maybe there's some element of like almost education or instructional part to this that could, increase the benefit of these kinds of spaces and also expand the kinds of instruments. Because I have a vision of things like singing bowls built into the ground that I think have a very profound effect and could be made very sturdy. So we'll loop around back to that. But this, what they're doing already seems incredible and something that could be expanded upon if we choose.
And I think there's no harm in.
We have a direct link to them.
Here we go. I was going to say this is a great opportunity to reach out and share our mission and what we're aiming to do, and build a relationship and see what we can learn from them, and if they want to be a part of it in different ways. So this is something that I think as a company, it being facilitated by the Unified Planet and the backing that this has in terms of all the different verticals of the games, maybe this company would be interested in being a part of it, right?
I got really big chills as you said that.
And the same thing for, you know, any of the, I think I asked a couple people to like research some stuff on instruments and things like that. Like the way the pitch can, you know, the way that we pitch it is about, you know, who's involved and the umbrella of the mission. And I think once people recognize that it's not even just one sort of industry, that it's layered across multiple industries, people will be interested and want to get involved in different ways. So I think sort of explaining that is very important.
Yeah, I had a look into those the weekend, sort of giveaways or instruments that we could have. So I thought you could sort of do a giveaway easily on site. People are there. We could do a sort of a tiered giveaway. So we look at something, a bigger item that we have a way that people can put into a, you know, apply for that. My head's not that awake today, clearly. But, you know, they can submit their information, and we say every, you know, 100 people, we will do a prize draw, and we will have a quartz crystal bowl to give away. So we have these different pricing brackets. So, you know, if you're looking at that price being around $100 to 150, we can easily have quite a different variation of instruments we can do for that. One of the things that I've seen that I really like as a giveaway that you can just hand out there and then, which is super cheap, is the little shaker eggs that you can brand.
Yeah, and those are so effective in so many ways, and you feel like you're kind of jamming along with someone.
Yeah.
Too. I love
And
that.
It's a powerful tool as well on many levels for healing. So I did some research into that. So you could pick up 1,000 of those branded they work out at $2.19 each, which is a really nice giveaway. I haven't found somewhere that brands them yet, but I used to have a wooden one. Now that's next level. Those are gorgeous, and they're made from wood. So we could also have, like with what we do, think about sustainability. Like, you know, if we're giving away these different instruments, where are they sourced from? What does that mean? So, you know, I found so that, I mean, it's across the board. There's like those little meditation percussion instruments are about $10.
Mm-hmm.
The singing bowls, you can get cheap ones, but I don't really like the really little cheap bowls so much. But that, you know, they're about $20, $25. What I found was really cool was it was like an imitation rain stick, like a cactus made from cactus plant, which are about $20. But they're really nice. They're about 20 inches long or so. And then, yeah, $20. So that's a nice one. But another one of my favorites, do you know those little frogs that you have the stick? And, you know, they're amazing. And you can get those for as little as $8 each. So again, we might be able to do some level of branding with those, but there's quite a range of options. So the frogs would be really fun for kids, and the shakers for kids, or just everyone really. So, I mean, that's sort of what I came up with. So just some different things. And then tuning forks, they're starting around $15 and upwards, maybe a little less. So again, these aren't, so the eggs are bulk by figures, but you know, we don't know what sort of deal and percentage discount we could get with larger things, but there's some different scales of giveaways. But I like the idea of having just a box of eggs, and we can just hand those out.
Yeah, I think we can iterate on it, right? So try one thing out and see how it flows. Something that is coming to me, Dom, was how you said, I'm also half awake as well, but where something is sourced from. So there could be a story behind where we're getting the material, right? It could be from, what's coming to me, I have this little bird whistle that's from Guatemala, and they're made by the locals there. So there could be a story that we could tell with the materials that are being used, and have that also be part of the mission. Is to, you know, bring awareness and then also help out communities that need that help right now.
Yeah.
Dom, I love the idea of having an egg shaker. And we could potentially, we could think about asking Amanda Sage to, if there's an egg that we could print an image onto it. She paints eggs. And that could be really cool as like a branded something like I'm hatching the unified planet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thing, you know,
like
hatching the unified planet, and that, you know, like we create a symbol where people Where people shake the shaker when they're in when they're going to events, and it could become a
Yeah.
symbol of a movement that you're
Get your
shaking.
shakers out.
Yeah, exactly. We could have something where, like, for example, when someone is like at a protest, for example, or when people want to like show that they're part of something, the shaker becomes something that's like a symbol of that movement. I really like that.
That's
as
a
an-
great
as an
idea.
idea that and connecting
Mhm.
like how people show, how people
Unity.
visibly show their unity.
I really like
Yeah.
that.
Ooh, imagine imagine 1,000 people shaking their eggs at the same time. That's that would be a not just a powerful but a beautiful sound.
Yeah, a beautiful sound and incredibly symbolic, saying like we're
Yeah.
shaking it, like we're
Together.
collectively shaking this hatching of the unified planet.
Yeah.
This is our shared mission because it's like it's a sound, it's a ritual, and it could go. We could. There's a symbol for the unified planet, which is it's a 2030 symbol. It's this, and it stands for eight stronger together. Choo choo, which is the vision train, which has been much portrayed by different artists, and so we could think about like as a ritual that we could potentially do here in San Francisco on the 26th, the anniversary of the UN. We potentially, as a prototype, get a number of these shakers and invite a number of people, like distribute these shakers around and have people like shake at the birthplace of the UN. Like that could be something that if you can get a thousand of these shakers for 2,000, what you'd say $2,900 for 1,000.
Yeah, I want to come back to that real quick though, because I think one thing Serena said about the sustainability of what we're doing is important to begin at an early time.
Yeah,
Like
ethical sourcing, etc.
yeah, a bunch of plastic egg shakers
Okay.
does not feel so great to me.
No, that's why I say that
Yeah.
they
There's
we can
wooden
get
ones, you said.
wooden ones. Obviously, they'll be a bit more expensive, but it's worth it. We can find where they're sourced from, or try and set up some new line of sourcing. I mean, there could be companies that would love to do that, so it's sustainable. And then we can find someone to do the printing. I used to have one, I think, from Guitar Center, and it had the Guitar Center logo on. So clearly, there's companies that are doing it. I'll just delve deeper and see what I can find.
Yeah,
But yeah, I'd like to start off not bringing a load more plastic into the world.
something organic and something that supports a small community, perhaps indigenous or something like that, like something real original.
You might be able to
Would be
find something on
amazing.
Etsy. Yeah.
Yeah,
Another thing that I really like about that idea with the shakers is, in general, shakers are to dispel negative energy. And so I like even just the symbolism of like bringing that cultural element into it, of using shakers to like, I know Native
Clear.
American cultures have used shakers for that. African cultures use it. Uh, Actually, like most cultures have used shakers for to dispel
shamanic
negative
stuff.
energy.
Yeah.
The other thing, though, that came to mind, and not to be like a negative Nancy on it, just like got this visual of when the advertisers made at at Super Bowl, or one big football game where they had all of these like Chick-fil-A cows and with the team name on it, but the team lost and they ended up throwing all of the cows, the plush cows, thousands and thousands of cows at each other and at like in the middle of the field. So that's my only thing of like, cool, we'll give people stuff at a, gathering like this, and maybe we just maybe take care to say, please don't throw.
Please don't harm
Well,
each
I
other.
think that also has to do I think that also has to do with how we distribute. Like, if we're gonna have something we're giving away, are we just trying to like shove it in the hands of every person? I don't think any of us feel clear on that. But it's like, hey, like, would you like to, participate? And is this something that you feel like good? There's almost, there's a consent around how we give things to people too, that I think is something the culture is learning as well. So I really like that point, Danielle. And
Emil,
Another thing I want to
go ahead. I'll say that in a moment.
Okay.
That point, yeah.
Yeah. Also, tingshaws is another one I still want to have a great idea. Like shaking the eggs, and if people had a tingshaw too, everything's clear, and that gentle,
Yeah.
powerful sound. Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, I I think one thing we can think about is how do we make a game out of the experience of sound portals, like we discussed the scavenger hunt.
Yes.
Where the shakers, the eggs, are like you're rewarded for playing the game, for getting to the last, to the end of it with the shaker. It's part of your initiation ritual,
And they find the shaker.
we could even do an egg hunt, right?
I was going to say,
Where
the Easter over
the
here.
final, right? The final,
Yeah.
the unified planet rabbit, and we man has a party with a white rabbit at the top of a mountain that like it ends the scavenger hunt, and they go and find their shaker, which is their like prize for playing the game, playing the scavenger hunt, and then that like we could initiate people into using the shaker in taking the Unified Planet Oath that we're going to be launching on the 26th of June, just as like an idea, the unanimous oath. And so that would start with, we are the unified planet. I am an Earth Guardian. On my honor, I commit to a thriving civilization in harmony with all life. That's the Unified Planet Oath. And then the unanimous charter is going to be a one-page document that is going to honor the 4 elements. And then the 5th element is like a vow on your honor to community. And so the 5th element starts with community in relationship to yourself, community in relationship to your friends and family in your nearest circle, and then community in relationship to the communities you belong to, all the way up to the cosmic community. So it's kind of like, that's how we're thinking about this as a unanimous charter. So definitely I can see us connecting dots here with this being a kind of like a reward mechanism that we present at harvest stage, and then we could potentially like turn that round into an experience. We're going to be at harvest stage on the 14th of June, and so we would have enough lead time up to the 26th of June if we wanted to design a ritual that would include these shakers. Just from a timeline perspective, if we can get this project scoped and funded and say that this is part of the game plan that we would be doing, and just thinking all about like what would that look like if this is a San Francisco, if we start with like, okay, our goal is 1,000 eggs in San Francisco, and our goal is to bring people through 1,000 people through an immersive experience where they're like onboarded into the ritual and the oath, and like that's the kind of thing we could plan out for the presentation, just as an example, right?
I think that's really cool.
Love where this is going, for sure. It's got
Yeah, there's that frame.
There's a lot of eggs here.
So yeah, I wanted to kind of just leave space for everyone to be able to add and contribute, and just feel free to edit. If you're interested in doing some research around tingshaws, go ahead and, feel inspired to really take in what you have and give us your ideas, because some of them are not from me. So I want to make sure that we capture them with everyone's thoughts the right way. And I don't know if Lucinda and Mark are going to be able to join us this week. Has anybody heard anything from them?
No.
Okay. I'll follow
I'm
up.
curious about the path of things, and maybe this is something that comes, but like this feels very intentional for Unified Planet, to having the egg, with that logo, to then hopefully making sure that the breadcrumbs are there of like, do we have a website that they're coming to, and so that we're not missing an opportunity to invite them into another opportunity, or to be a part of the Sound Alliance, or the food alliance. But I can see how like like for me, I 100% want to give my energy to this, and but for me to make the time, it's like I need to see how the pieces kind of come together too, for sound.
Yeah, well, so thank you for that, for raising that, Danielle. So, what we're seeing is that the process, like we're all involved on a week on, week off basis, and what we're proposing to funders is that we would people would earn 1 star a minute for their participation in this process, in this like collective intelligence application, and they would get gifted 1 star a minute. And what that means is like the stars can only be gifted on, and so you can choose anyone in your team in this particular guild to give your stars to, and what the idea is, it like becomes an effortocracy. Like 50% is earned and 50% is an effortocracy, and like you'll see who, based on people's contribution, like who will get the gifted stars. And then we can create a whole currency around the use of those gifted stars, where certain things will only be able to be purchased with gifted stars. Now, the way we're thinking about this, and it's all super early on, is that what we want to do is have stars be transferable. 1 star equals $1. So essentially, as you're participating in this guild, you're earning, let's say an average of 2 stars a minute. Or $120 an hour for your participation. But then as the project's successful, they can become community DAOs. So you could raise money and distribute that based on the network. But the way that everybody that participates in the game is remunerated is 10% of anything that's raised in any guild or any alliance, for any company, any foundation, or for a community that we facilitate. 10% of that goes back into a commons fund that is distributed and made available to everybody that participated in the seed, sprout, blossom, harvest stage. And so the way we're looking to like convert value from seed to harvest is successful harvest, projects getting funded and raising money, and that 10% of that money being raised going back to replenish and like bring together the people that have been participating on that. That's what we're proposing. It's all one big experiment. It's like nobody's done this before, but it looks a little like a lot of things that happen, like credit card points and frequent flyer miles and things like that. But it's an in-game currency, and so that's how we're thinking about that. And ultimately, the Sound Portal Guild could spin off one or more companies if it wanted, but really what we as Unified Planet are looking to do is provide the infrastructure that this could be a DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization, and the guild as like a trusted network of people can raise money and distribute that money across those that are contributing to it. So that's how we're thinking about it, and we're going to try and support as much as we possibly can as this goes forward.
Yeah, I appreciate that so much. I think my question is more of with I like the trail of breadcrumbs in terms of I know that we're making the egg for a particular purpose for this gathering, and then thinking of the details about, okay, here is our, there's the branding or the website that we want them to come back to, and then that, like, making sure that all of the other pieces are there so that it's not just this kind of one-off thing that people get excited about, and then we're not utilizing that to create the community that we're trying to create, and whether that's Unified Planet that then goes into all of the other portals.
I completely get it, and really grateful that you're raising this, and that's the that's the any idea of June 26th is just like one point on the calendar. It's ultimately up to you guys, like when you want to do, what and when you want to do. That's just me kind of trying to connect dots with other things that are going on with the game, and similarly, this is like the projects that end up coming in is completely being driven by the energy that you have here present. And you can bring more people into this guild. You can scale this up to 8 people. And so if you want to invite others that you think can contribute, that's totally your
call.
Your call.
I have a quick.
That, aligning things when they coordinate with other parts of the game is really good exposure, just to what it is that we're doing, and the cross-pollination. There's a lot of cross-pollination that really happens there. So if we can put it into alignment, then that sounds great. Go ahead.
Can I ask a quick question? Sorry.
Go ahead, Tom.
Do you see that there might be a centralized resources available for the different guilds as we go forward? So let's say you might say, we'll get some funding that's going to be web design for social media, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. So this is a hunch because we haven't got there yet, but the hunch is that resources will flow through the alliances. And so the alliances will be like train stations distributing resources to the guilds and projects that are proposed through the alliance. And then the Savannah Foundation and also the Up Game, as it matures its organizational structure, can raise money itself. And ultimately, I can see a day coming where the Up Game will raise its own fund based on the stars, and that fund, I can see us getting a fund based on self-organizing collective intelligence, where the distribution of the capital from the fund goes through the alliances and distributes and ties to smart contracts. I can see that coming, but like it's not going to be there in this initial, like ultimately our goal is to move as much money as it takes to like transform the planet. But like, and this be, everybody's not like, this isn't our startup, as I mentioned earlier, we're not co-founders of the Unified Planet, we're founding players as well as you. We're curators here of the like initial seeding of the game, but this really belongs to everyone. And it's our answer to the fact that people have for a long time said, why can't we work together? Why are we constantly fragmenting our efforts into all of these structures that end up being the age of the lone wolf, the cult of the individual? And so that's really what we're getting at here is like, let's create a container that is so large, it includes the entire planet, and like find ways to support us all working together. And it starts in the micro, it starts in like how we think about this as like a guild, like as a small pod of people that are incredibly capable to execute on these kind of things and could do it at like relatively low budgets with very high impact.
Lucian, I have a question for you. So I think from my understanding, what Danielle is referring to is more like our ability to have a retention plan in place. So when you guys presented at the World Economic Forum, I remember seeing a PDF of all of the 8 or 7 fundable concepts that was created on a landing page. And I've poked around the website a little bit. I can't remember which one, if it was Savannah House or Unified Planet or which URL it was. But I think for us, what we need is to understand the resources we have available, for example, for us to use part of that website. If someone is getting a takeaway with a shaker that talks about Unified Planet and talks about the missions, and there's a little maybe index card that has some information about the purpose of sound and even the shaker as a shamanic symbol, but then ties back to a link to a website, how do we as the sound portal then work with you guys to have information up on that website that laces through to, let's say, an email subscribe list that's directly about the sound fund or whatever it might be. So I think that the clarity that we need is around the organizational structures. Personally, for me, the marketing resources I have available right now to myself to make that happen, because I don't know that anyone here has the actual time commitment to do back end things like that. So I think there's just more, I think I personally need some clarity on that too.
Yeah, okay. Beautiful questions, Serena. Thank you. And thanks for that clarity of what Danielle was asking. So So right now, Unified Planet's like a month old.
Yeah.
Our resources is like us and the momentum, the meme engine that we're on, and we're all collectively capable, well networks people that are seeing a shared belief that stacking together these solutions is going to make it easier for us to collectively fundraise. But it's like all of our efforts. So we've got ourselves. We haven't yet raised any money. We're all working here on the shared belief of like what's being created here for the common good. But we do have a bunch of resources actually available. So, and as far as like up.game website, that is like there's a sound section. If you go there under games, you can click under upgrades, and you'll see the sound for health 8 upgrades. We can have that can be built into a microsite for sound. So if you want a sound portal guild section on the website that you can go and like manage what goes there and what it says about the sound guild, and includes potentially videos and things like that, or like asks or fundraising requests, any of that can all get built in. We're using Squarespace for that, so we can kind of create a collaborative project either with Canva or Squarespace. That's the website, and so totally like game for you to like help us think through how can the website be a space to showcase the actions of the guild. Number one. Number two, Savannah Foundation has spent 2 years gathering together open source technologies specifically designed for multi-stakeholder collaboration. And so we have like a whole toolkit, a whole digital collaboration environment that includes everything from a digital wallet to video conferencing tools, whiteboarding tools, forums, questionnaires, like project management tools, tasks. You basically have like a ton of resources available. Think of it like a Slack meets an Asana kind of thing. And the whole idea is we believe that community technologies need to be in the commons. And so that's why we went and pulled all of these different open source tools together. And we're just at the beginning of that. But that is freely available to you. So at the point where you're like, okay, we as a sound technology guild, as a sound portal guild, we want to now go out and start inviting others in the sound community in. We will happily create a digital space within the Unified Planet, within up.game, for you to have your own like digital workspace, basically. And so we're looking like, I've been under the hood of at least 1,000 of these communities. And so what we've learned is that more often than not, where communities fail is they put too much technology in too early. And so I'm watching based on like what I know of like empowering communities in the like at least 10,000 hours I've done of studying communities. I'm watching for when those tools are needed, and absolutely if you want them, they're there. But we're like right now a Google Doc is like enough, because often the tools we've created are a bit like putting a kind of V8 engine in a go-kart. Like in the beginning, you just don't need an engine that big. But as you start to scale and invite others that have experienced the sound portal experience, you absolutely may want to invite them to be part of a community, and that can be a doorway in. So hopefully that's clear. And then ultimately we want to like we're a team where like we haven't raised external capital yet. When we do, we're going to be looking at like how can we support the scaling as fast as trust scales. How can we support the scaling of what we're supporting the teams, the guilds and the alliances that are coming through the game as much as possible? And I think capital is going to be a big one of that. So I totally see us being a fund in the future, among many other things. But that's going to be, that's going to be emergent, and it's going to be responding to what we're seeing as needs from guilds like this. So
that's all really exciting. I just want to say that right off. And I really appreciate the background work and thought that's being put into like, okay, like when the time is ready, then the next tools will be available. Because I had a little bit of thought, man, like I've heard about all these communication tools, but like where are they? But now I get why we're in this process in this way. And what I'm hearing we're kind of like coming together around right now is I'm going to do some research on tingshaws and also on like sound art installations. And this idea of a launch of some kind that brings people in an interactive way, like with shakers or tingshaws. And then there's infrastructure, as Danielle is talking about, like a website, and that where people are able to see what other long-term visions that we have that are well articulated around more exhibits. Yes, I know that, Shane, not all tingshaws are created equal. Same with shakers, which is why I'm thinking like I want to feel the shaker first. So
there's no harm in getting samples mailed to you. Lots of people will do that, FYI. So we should
awesome.
be.
Yeah, but I think our visions are super beautiful. We know we're really aligned with each other, and as we hone in on a space and a way to launch, maybe with one vehicle or multiple vehicles, then, or even a space that it's based around, and then, branding on the shakers or other tools we pass out to engage people, and then that can really expand the awareness of what we're doing and also build the energy into other things to do with the up game and emphasize that up is unified planet. Like that's what we're looking to do. And the metaphor, like I had this vision of everyone having shakers, and then there's someone conducting and you're like, okay, everyone shake the shaker like at your own pace. And everyone does that, and there's just white noise. It's like, okay, hear how you are your own individual rhythm and your own individual feeling. Now everyone, let's shake it together and feel how we can all be connected too. And it's just like the sort of metaphors you can draw that align certain neural patterns for how interconnected and individual we are so powerful. And just a short like feeling into the possibilities inherent in that is really like, expanding my consciousness in so many directions right now.
Same here.
So that's some of my thoughts, and we have 5 minutes till the next group. So anything we want to conclude? I know what some of the research I'm going to do to bring for tomorrow.
What would be helpful, and thank you for putting a document together. It's great to see it down. Should we just maybe add some pricing to it? I'm happy to sort of start filling in the gaps and just throw some numbers in there just from the research I'll do.
Yeah, I would love that. That would be very much appreciated. And this document is just a baseline. Everyone can add to it, and I might have missed some of the actual idea because I perceive maybe something differently. So please, if you see your name next to something too, feel free to riff on it and add more to it. But my initial thought and my intuition's telling us that we should get like a really solid kind of our low-hanging fruit, kind of really ideated out in a great presentation, and then move forward from there and try to get to the medium goals as much as we can. But this is obviously not an overnight process, and certainly doing it in a week is a lot too. So let's just do the best we can, and wherever we're at is where we're at. But I think this should give us a good shape around next steps, and we'll go with our flow as much as we can. There's a lot going on right now. There's so much intensity. So I just wanted, I wanted to make this meeting just more about letting things come in, what's coming through our senses as we're seeing our own goals, our own conversations on paper, and what can we do to just, riff on that and be in the art with it. So now that we've have a solar place of this document, how can we bring our yin into this and really make it meaty for everyone to wrap their heads around? Does anybody have anything else they want to share before we end?
I have a question. Not it doesn't. Bleh. Okay, so the question is, are we, in a sense, promoting up game, Unified Planet, or are we promoting sound? And because I think that also shares on like what this next thing that it like this thing that we're crafting as the low hanging fruit, and how the language gets formed and what it looks like. Um, so
Yeah,
I just like clarity on that.
I personally think that it's both, because when we came up with this idea, it became an idea where this immersive portal could be multifaceted, right? So I actually think it's a positive that we're interlacing these two together, because the portal then has the ability to showcase all the work and all the different projects, but sound, as we started with sound for a reason. And for me, the reason I'm excited about it being immersed and laced together is because that means that more of these will exist and more of the message of sound will be able to be permeated. So I see it as actually a combination of the story of how Unified Planet got started and how these portals are actually being laced through each of the games, with sound being the thing that brought everything together. So I very much think that in terms of branding, we should be looking at it from that layer, but we have a mission as the Sound Alliance to really bring the languaging together for our sound portals. So correct me if I'm wrong, Lucian, but I see that maybe the mobile unit that we're creating could be reconstructed for an environment cause or for a food cause, but we're starting with sound as the first theme to do these with.
Totally, and that's these are interdependent. So the notion the unified planet is kind of the hive, and the sound portal is like creating a guild within that hive, you know. And the whole idea is, as these as more and more guilds and alliances form, they're all creating more complementary infrastructure for each other. So fundamentally, that like what you'll be doing is the activities of the sound portal guild, but where it makes sense and where like the activities of other unified planet events, gatherings, convenings, efforts, where that can be intersected with the same portal guild, that makes sense. It's all about mutuality here. It's like it has to make sense for everybody involved. And we're just going to continue to connect the dots and be like, hey, there's this event happening on the 26th that like, you know, could be a major like gathering spot for us as a collective effort. But it's totally up to you whether you would like to have that as a milestone, or that you'd like to have another event as a milestone. You know, it's like it's your call, and we're just going to continue, you know, trying to offer value for the guilds to thrive, and then ultimately like offer those opportunities for where the guilds can benefit from being part of this kind of collective effort, of all these other efforts. Yeah, and we're 2 weeks, you know, we're a month in, you know, we're just getting started, and it's you know, every spidey sense in my body says that we're like this is the fastest engine I've ever seen for community transformation, because I kind of geek out on that stuff. So
This just helps me in connecting the dots for the story that's unfolding of like how, you know, like I'm already talking about the Sound Alliance. Now how can I weave the actual, you know, unified planet in with that, and how those things work together. And I mean, I think that that'll start to unfold as I understand it better and as we understand it. But yeah, that's helpful.
You know, Danielle, you are a founding player of the Unified Planet, like of the up game, and so that's like that's kind of how we position it, is like we're all creating this big container together. And like I described it earlier today, like a credibility cauldron. What happens is every single one of us that shows up for the unified planet is like adding our ingredients to the stone soup that is the unified planet. And like this is going to be like the tastiest soup, you know, we can possibly make. But it's like we're all co-creating this together. And the energy. So
Lucy, and just one point of clarification. On my notes, I wrote that the event is on June 27th. Is it on June 26th or June 27th?
Both days. So we're kicking off the unanimous charter. We're kicking off on the 20th of on the 20th of June with this global prayer circle connecting Indigenous communities all over the world. And then we're going to be campaigning for more signatures and a ritual around that unanimous charter. And then I was asked to be among 51 people. Basically, 51 people signed the UN Charter 75 years ago on the 26th of June. And Muhammad Yunus, who won the Nobel Peace Prize for his work in microfinance, he's been a dear friend for like 14 years. And he's gathered together 51 leaders, like Mary Robinson, who used to be Prime Minister of Ireland, like one of the previous Secretary Generals of the UN. And he's asked me to be among those 51 people to be the person here in San Francisco. And that's on the 26th and 27th. 26th is the actual 75th year anniversary of the signing, and 27th. So we've partnered with World Unity Week, which is a week that's going on like a lot of different efforts. And so the events on the 26th and 27th is just, it's really around like celebrating the fact that San Francisco is the birthplace of the UN, that this is 75 years from the UN, and this is a time for us to be unanimous in our message around like the UN isn't really fit for purpose as a community-driven organization. And so the Unified Planet is positioning itself as like, we wish to be, we're not right now, but we wish to be like the UN for communities and thread together this network of communities around the world. And like, how does that begin? How does one go out to create that organization? Because it doesn't look like any organization that's been birthed before. You know, so that's ultimately it. So does that make sense, Serena?
Yes. And then it's a virtual event, or is it actually in person?
Good question. There's definitely a lot of virtual stuff, and we don't yet know what's going to happen. You know, it's in a month from now, so we're 26 days. So there's definitely something in Grace Cathedral on the 27th that's going to be broadcast all over the world. There's multiple broadcasts happening online, and I just offered, I said, Savannah House is, you know, we're like the birthplace of the Golden Gate Bridge and things. So if we could potentially host something that's part of the broadcast, given we're the like representative in San Francisco, but we could also go do something at the Palace of Fine Arts or something like that. We could potentially do something in Muir Woods as well at the commemoration of the UN there with the Roosevelt plaque. There's a few things we could do to like try and bring. There's no Wi-Fi down in Muir Woods though, so there's no internet. So we're struggling. Like that would just be something we would do.
It'd be pre-recorded kind of a thing. There's a lot of options out there, but it just depends on what the world looks like. Frankly, we're all, you know how we all take it week to week here. So think about both. Think about both.
Yeah, and the reason we're asking is more because of bringing sound in and where we would go with our message and how to plan with that. But
right on.
And if I'm flying in still or not.
I think you should come anyway. That's probably like just best practice, you know.
My ticket this week.
Selfish thing, but okay, guys. Well, it's 5:06, and I know that we have one more group that you guys are doing. So, thank you for your time today. Feel free to edit, add, delete, whatever you need to do to this document, and hopefully we'll have some more to riff on tomorrow, same time at 4:00.
Yeah.
Thank you, Serena. Thank you, Emil. Thank you, everyone.
Another
brilliant hour. I'm so stoked to see where all of this keeps going.
And congratulations.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm a lucky man.
Congratulations.
All right, guys. Have a good night.
That's why y'all didn't see me last week. I was sneaking her off. She didn't know what she was walking into.
Nice.
So sweet. Bye.
And anyone is welcome to stay. Andrea is the Alliance. So anyone welcome. Again, two stars a minute are clocking up, or one plus the gifting one. That's our intention. So
Oh yeah.
imagine yourself in your Super Mario go-kart going ding 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 ding. We need a system in place.
Bye.
I'm gonna.
Bye, Serena.
Like,
Bye.
bye, Serena.
I'm switching off my video, but I'm gonna still listen.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm gonna stay too. I might turn off my video.
Cool.
Cool.
Well, welcome. Would anyone like, as we transition across, would anyone like to do? I'd love to like drop in. I've been on my feet since 10:30, so I'd love to like drop in together if anyone feels called to do an offering for the Alliance. Anyone in a position to do that?
For sound or for prayer or?
Anything, spoken word prayer. It could be an invocation. It could be something to mark our to synchronize together around.
Well, I think it's each one you've been taking a minute, and like being from Omaha and knowing that kind of what's been happening with the world, and we had someone that passed away or got shot during a peaceful protest, and we know that everything's getting a little more crazy, but it also, that's the reason why sound is in the first place. So maybe say an om, like just a moment of just humming to yourself, or to be in a space of just reverence for what we have right now.
Beautiful.
Because everything's a little bit crazier than what we had last week as well. Or if anyone has any different sound components that's available, which Emil or Danielle may have.
I don't necessarily want to offer sound, but I just want to add a little to the prayer. I see, that there's so, again, we're at an even crazier time than last week, and may we, as a human species, find more reason to unite around qualities of love, connection, peacefulness, and unity through all of the hardships, and really see how similar our goals are, how much we want the same thing, and align together with that.
Yes, sir.
That's my prayer. Would you like to guide an om?
All right, we'll just start with kind of like a countdown: 3, 2, 1.
Thank you for leading that and the prayer. One of the things that I was late getting on the call today because I had a conversation with my students, and they're just, everyone is so overstimulated right now, and so I offer the remembrance of how powerful the space between the sound is, and the rest and the pause and the peak of breath where we can, and being overstimulated.
Yeah. And I think it's also what all of us are bringing to the table of what aligning sound is for communities, and also for experiences and collaborations going forward, and even the research and the technology that's going to come out of this. I mean, we're kind of in the most chaotic place, but also creating a lot of beautiful sound and music at the same time. So one of the I guess major components was the science of sound and all the psychological, all the different research or areas of interest that we want to educate people on going forward, because Sound Alliance has that aspect of the marketing, the languaging, the vernacular, and knowing that it has the open source aspects of how do we bring this out into spaces through experiences and technologies so that the narrative is similar and is as it's being expressed.
Yeah, and I think that like the portal is, like combining this with what's happening in the portal and like this event, even with the eggs, I think is a great opportunity to, have that resource for people to go to that link on the egg and go, to this website that just even starts collecting, you know, who's interested in who is practicing sound as a tool for medicine and who's interested in more types of experiences maybe. um, I don't know, maybe I, as low hanging fruit, what would be maybe the most important information to gather that's not overwhelming that we could put on a website, um, and then maybe through you know I get overwhelmed in this conversation because there's just so much, and I still don't really know where the best place to start is. Is it we come and just come here now and define, or the next meeting we showcase what we've defined as these roles and how practitioners show up. Um,
Well, it's also, I think we look at how, as practitioners, but also as anyone that's attending, what is the biggest things that we want to take away? The biggest things that we see right now is anxiety. We have created a culture of fear and dominance and anger and rage, and being able to use rattles during a sound experience is going to help regulate someone's nervous system. And people use sound as ways of regulating what they are doing on a daily basis. If it's, playing the bowls, if it's ringing a bell, if it's playing a tingsha, like the percussive aspect, I think right now of sound seems to be a driving factor because there's so much inner rage that now, and that's just a small portion, but that's what the media and that's what everything is seeing right now. So it's like, how can we break the chains of what's been going on in our society right now? How can we bring a different narrative that there's more play to be had, there's more resonance within the field, from a psychological, from an emotional component, like sound makes you feel. Like, how do I want to feel? I want to feel better than what I do now. So anyone that is going to any of these experiences or, using technologies or at home, just looking up, like, it's like, what are the little not encyclopedia, but like just smaller cheat sheets of what we want to take away on a daily basis that are easily digestible.
I really love that this cheat sheet, that maybe I can see even I don't would the like is this gathering is this more thought of as a celebration or a protest, because I want to kind of use the right words in this, but like say we do this thing with the egg, there's also they're getting an experience, we're creating something that is experiential so that they can find empowerment through this shaker tool, and maybe even introducing them to the power of their own voice. And maybe there's an opportunity to ask them to create soothing sounds or regenerative sounds, and introducing that as a tool for empowerment and easing anxiety, or recentering or grounding, and then also collectively making that sound to do that. And then maybe what they come back to in the website, that we encourage them to come back to a website, is some other ways that they can have self-created sound at home to empower themselves, and doing that and educating them around the tools that they already have, like their voice, or now this tool, this egg. And maybe then at that point they go, huh?
Or even using spoons, like putting two spoons together, like.
Or just, drumming on a table, but those things can come, or on your chest. And then maybe even selling the egg after the whole thing at a low cost, that kind of introduces them to, here's an accessible tool that you can purchase. I lost it. But then this starts the dialogue. Oh, the other thing is, one of the things that I was thinking here, how can I take more action here? How can I be more support here? One idea that I don't know that it's going to happen, but was kind of creating this mass meditation experience of using sound, using voice as a tool for empowerment and relieving anxiety and stress. But then also tying it into, how can we get more people to register to vote, and then inviting those people into that space as well, so that we can encourage people to empower themselves on this whole other level through voting. I'm sure there are other things that we could bring in that would maybe not to oversaturate them and give people too many choices, but it can be experiential. It can bring them back to a particular space on the web, so that we can introduce them to more information as we build a platform around the educational resources.
Yeah, because I think there's that aspect of the cheat sheets, or just the smaller doses, because it's like, oh, I want to have this dose. Oh, I want to have this dose. Oh, I'm going to have this. So it's becomes a different way of caring for themselves, because everything with sound deals with regulation and co-regulation. Like with symphonies, you're co-regulating in resonance, and you're seeing everything go together. Like what do you call it? The balls that go together. It's after a while, it's they start co-regulating together. Mm-hmm. And so
training and yeah.
Well, and in training together. Sorry, I couldn't figure out the word. But it's with the way our society is, it's or what we've seen by just these protests and everything, it's we want empowerment, and we want encouragement. We want people to feel a sense that they're going to be okay. And sound, as a little kid, you use your rattle as a kid, you use your binky or whatever. It's we have to go back to those childlike states to push us to remember the greater sounds that are within ourselves. So I totally on board for that. We're too
all of it. Well, there's something, Emil, are you saying something to it?
Yeah, I just want to emphasize something real quick, because I know part of this is about the language, and there are words that are more used in the healing community, and there's words that are used more in the medical community, and a lot of them, you know what words mean one thing in one community, and they mean the same thing, and there's a word in the other community means the same thing. But anyways, one thing you said is the word regulation, regulating the nervous system. That's a very good way of introducing the benefits of sound into the medical side. So I'm just I'm easily envisioning, in terms of proposals for projects or instruments within the medical system, they're because this is so good at regulating people's nervous systems, people's organs, and so yeah, I just wanted to
I'm friends with Yeah, that's because that's the biggest thing is like we have to be able to move our body, and we've been isolated indoors, which being able to use instruments is amazing to be able to self-regulate because we're not getting massages, we're not getting to, hugs or anything like that. But I'm also friends with a play therapist who actually has an institute that uses regulation tools. So I've been talking with her on, all the different things that are available that they utilize, and even how musical instruments, because when you're talking about the playgrounds, that the kids are just regulating themselves because
Yeah.
they're with their parents, and it's like, okay, my mom's not coming over here right now, I'm going to go play with this for a while. And they know that they're doing it, but it's like not conscious, it's just inherent. Like how are we taking care of ourselves? So really it's like everything is like creating a kids but adults version. Yeah.
I'm wondering, I can see, like what we're talking about right now really fits with, this idea for, um, matching this with the egg and that gathering and how we can initially start to introduce the conversation of sound as an empowerment tool, and Unified Planet. Uh, is that the project? Is that the thing that we should be looking at, or like?
I think it's the like the science of sound or the education component is that it fills in to to what you're wanting to lead on to the next case.
Mhm.
So an education for one area is going to lead into other areas, which then you could have like little master classes available by different sound healers, or, just ways, I guess, in by different states, like more Creole type of music versus, what's in San Francisco or in Texas. So it's like, if you look at it from a larger scale, but you're like, okay, this is in San Francisco. What type of music is played the most that people want to listen to? And then what's the musical instruments behind it? What's the education that's available? So I don't know if like San Francisco has, I mean, from a sound component of education, where do people learn about sound right now?
YouTube.
They did learn about it at Globe or CIIS, but both have moved out of there
Okay.
since, in terms of like sound. Globe, David's place is up in Marin,
Okay.
and CIS, they discontinued their sound healing program. But a lot of those, but you can still access like I'm close with I know that a lot of the professors and teachers from Globe pretty well, and a lot of them are like definite experts.
Mhm.
So that's a good resource. Of course, David knows a lot of people.
He's still
Yeah, but
teaching though. He's just up in Marin or wherever.
Yeah,
North.
totally. That's all still happening. If you're saying San Francisco specifically, like if we talk about the Bay Area,
Yeah.
then yeah, when Globe
Well, it's like the
Institute
sound
is still there.
experiences. It's like the sound experiences, it seems like, would happen most likely in San Francisco to start. Would that be right, Lucian and Danielle and everyone?
Yeah, I'd say we've got a
Yes.
critical
Yes.
mass there. Yeah, we got a critical mass here, and also just with the other, we're intentionally trying to get a critical mass of people in the Bay Area in the games, and then like as a rough rule of thumb, our goal is to have 50% of people that play the game from the Bay Area and 50% from around the world. Just as a rough, that's how we think about populating the games, because that way the Bay Area can be with Savannah House here and everything we can do in person. We can use the network effect of physical, like us being able to layer all these different efforts on together here in the Bay Area as a way to scale Unified Planet to cities in the world. We would like to see a Unified Planet embassy in every major city in the world as fast as possible. And so prove it here in the Bay Area and then scale it beyond. So it's no accident that the majority of the Sound Portal Guild are in the Bay Area.
So would it be also like almost a one-for-one model of a player in the San Francisco area to a player outside of the area?
No, we're just starting, not quite, no. We're just starting by focusing like founding players getting a kind of critical mass in the Bay Area, just because we want to show that location and proximity to other efforts is a really important factor in systems change. But no, I mean, as the Unified Planet gets more resources, I can see us having like hubs for people to play the game in every major city. You know, it's like that's the goal, yeah. But we're just like Savannah House and San Francisco is like at the heart of our prototype.
Okay.
So, but that's not to say there's anything like, you know, Ecoversities, which has come out. I can share around the food synthesis, but Ecoversities is a project in Costa Rica. You know, another one of the projects is based in Colorado. Another one is based in New Zealand. You know, the projects are popping up lots of different locations, but just I think the Bay Area and generally California, you know, we've got some good connections with Gavin Newsom's office, with the governor of the state, and just thinking about how some of those channels could be used for funding, and how ultimately California and the Bay Area can kind of lead the world in reimagining the planetary commons.
Okay. Shane, do you have input?
I don't know. I mean, I think when it comes to people who are like, I don't know, being on the ground, I haven't had all the time to like spend time with the researchers and people who are like actually super well informed. But that's not to say I couldn't possibly reach out to a couple people. I'd have to think a little harder. People who I have connections to in this realm. Yeah, get back to me on it. I'll get back to you on it, because most of my connections and resources in this realm are more festival wide than like on the science side. Anybody on the science side that's done like really strong stuff are people who I've been wanting to talk to for years, and I've just never gotten around to talking to them.
Dominic, do you have anything from your resonance project and everything that you're doing?
It'll help if I turn the microphone off. Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of involved in some research side with a quantum physicist. There's still early days on that, but I'd be happy to share that as we go forward. I did some work with mental health, part of Mariposa County. And so we did, it was a mental health awareness weekend that they did at the Mariposa Butterfly Festival. So we just set up there, and it was about providing sound, but then giving education around sound. So people were asking questions. We had some like little handouts and things like that. So stuff along those lines. Is that kind of?
Yeah.
I missed a little bit earlier of the objective, so I'm sorry if I've just gone off on a tangent.
Tangents are good, because that's more ideas that come out of it.
Right.
Well, I think it's in the education, it's, you know, you're dealing with either someone that's kinesthetic, audio, or visual. So any way to like give education or teach in those arenas to hit, you know, everyone that goes through either a sound experience utilizes technology or the education, to hit all those factors is one of the, I guess, major things. Is like, okay, why am I learning about this? Okay, where am I going to use this again? Where am I, and how am I going to teach someone about this? It's like, as soon as you learn something, best that you can teach it. So any type of information, if they can be able to viral it out to someone else in order to help someone else. So it seems like there'd be more of like the collaborative sound waves that are going out with the education, that it's not just like, oh, this is quite scientific. It's like, okay, what is this? How is this helping me right now that I can utilize, that I can maybe help my mom or my sister or someone else that needs some type of, you know, calming down or feeling more at home per se.
Yeah, I could speak to that for a moment. Just that I know you dropped in for a little bit on my workshop 2 days ago, and I've been doing this training, teaching people how to tone effectively and embody themselves and move energy with their own voice for something like at least 4 or 5 years now, and the reflections are incredible. Like, just this shift in awareness of how simple it is to access the voice, and then how simple it is to also teach someone else what you just learned is really, really, you know, heartening beyond heartening. And that's why I continue to do it, because it's like the highest level of satisfaction and beautiful impact that I see happening, that I share. Mm-hmm. And I've developed it intuitively through places I've learned from, taking different elements, and I've also taught some people how to do that while encouraging them to put their own spin on it. But basically, I can spend, you know, 10 minutes with an individual or an hour with a group, and by the end of that, everyone gets like how they can use their voice to move energy in themselves, and how they could talk to someone else about it or inspire someone else to use the voice to regulate their nervous system, to come into a peaceful, deep, relaxed state, and to, you know, also just own and love who they are. That's on another part of it. But I thought I'd share that.
So it's looking at the voice, but then also looking at instrumentals.
Mm-hmm. Instrumentals. So, well, we talked about singing bowls. I found in hospitals, singing bowls were the most effective thing. I'm just talking like Tibetan bowls, which I would carry around from room to room. Those were incredibly effective.
Okay.
There's not a huge amount of research out there. That's one of the aspects at the moment. Actual credible, real peer-reviewed studies on how the instruments are affecting the body. We have an idea of how it relates to meditation, but there's so much more going on than just getting into a meditative state. You know, it's stimulating the body in different areas of the brain in a way I don't think we don't fully understand it yet. And I think that's a big part of it. And that's hopefully at some point I'll have a little bit more research on that. I think, as Emil was saying, one of the most powerful things is the voice. I find not everyone's comfortable with their voice. And that's a beautiful practice when you can get comfortable. And I think one of the most powerful things they're really starting to see, and this I like to use, is humming. So humming is a great one. So if you kind of get people to rattle and hum at the same time, isn't that a U2 album? that's really powerful. So you're kind of meeting people where they are. So there's ways. Something that came up for me, and I'm sorry if I'm kind of repeating previous discussions or you've kind of picked this apart, but I know that my daughter, when she was 13, got hugely into ASMR, and it's like, it's huge, and it's something that so many people have tapped into so fast and so quickly, and it's powerful. I mean, the thing is, it's, you know, it may have got a bit commercialized, and there's all these people got the YouTube channels, but it's real, and it works. So I was curious if there's some way you can tap into a feedback loop around ASMR. So anytime we're asking people, we want to hear from you. We want to hear your sounds. We want to hear which sounds help you. So we're not always trying to guess that or define it for others. That we can start to say, look, we're holding this, like, send us your sound bites, send us your videos. We want to see how you use your body as an instrument. We want to see if you use ASI, just things like that. So we can learn from what works for people.
Well, it's like beatboxing.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people in rap, I mean, they use beatboxing as a way of regulating or as connecting.
Yeah.
connecting of beatboxing and the rap competitions you'd see, you know, downtown, and it's like they're not using anything other than their body, and most of the time we don't even want to use our body.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's amazing. So I mean, that's just one thought in terms of applying some of the science that we know, but it's always catching people's attention and what is going to really sort of resonate with people. So it's got to be something where you're just not immediately sort of switching them over in their brain into science, that it still remains within that creativity.
Mm-hmm.
So often if we allow people to buy into that process and be the ones that are creating, be the ones that are imagining what's possible, and we can apply the science to that, you know, hey, we'll help you know what's happening here. When you're humming, when you're beatboxing, when you're whistling, you know, this is some of the things that are happening. So we can kind of make it an interactive process.
I wish that I know that there's a lot of videos I've seen that's like the, you know, short sound bites or short ways of like explaining sound. And I don't know if there's like different cartoons that we link to for sound in general, or just, I wish that there was like cartoons that had, you know, sound bowl playing and those. I mean, we see that on like, there's like 3 different ones that I've seen right now that talk more about spiritual sciences, where they have that in place. But it's like, because I know that there is that research that is still to be done for that going forward, but there isn't as of right now.
Sort of like the spirit science type range of information, where it's you know, well presented, easy to digest, kind of whatever you think of that. But it's a good entry point. Yeah.
Lucian, what's your thoughts?
I just went to the loo, so I just missed the last minute. But you know, I just reflections on the conversation is, I think really focusing on the project that this started with, Andrea, with the Leo and Psyche Institute. You know, just starting with that shared language and, you know, gathering of the resources we know is like, I think, a really, really tangible place to begin, and then looking at how this can support, you know, all of the other activities that are emerging, and like have a roadmap for the projects of the Unified Planet Sound Alliance that could include, like, I think Project Echo is amazing from a comic book perspective. I can see that being a whole like media, you know, like meme machine, you know. And so I can see there being like, we don't actually need to start with this being a comic book. We could start with there being certain characters that an illustrator creates, where a character for Sonic, a character for Sonar, a character for Echo, for example, and certain messages that are like memes that are like from woo to true could be kind of spoken by these like androgynous sound superheroes. And it could be just our distribution strategy is like, we don't put out white papers, we put out memes, for example, as like one of the areas. So yeah, I think just building more around that, and Andrea, if there's any way you would like to, or anyone here, have fun with the character development of those kind of sound superheroes, I think that's where like a picture can tell 1,000 words.
Yeah.
You know, where
sound bite. I mean, we're doing,
it's a sound bite.
It's like we're doing sound. We need to do sound, even though it's visual will be there, or the movement, but it's like we're trying to get people to actually feel better by using sound. And the way
it could be like that is super cool. You could do a bunch of like GIFs, sound enabled GIFs of these characters that would deliver a particular sound frequency with a message, with a scientific message alongside. So they would literally be sound bites, and they'd be like short animated, like 5-second GIF videos that people could click on that would present a particular sound frequency combined with a fact. just spitballing here, but that kind of thing could be really cool as a way to, like, a low budget way of potentially having something that could be shared really wide.
Or all the sound healers, like, that have different instruments, like, would be the background of it, like whatever Emil using the mouth harp.
Jaw harp.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
It's either one, mouth harp or jaw harp.
Yeah, jaw harp.
Yeah.
And then like Danielle or Dominic and Shane, it's like whatever bowl you love to use the most, and have that kind of be a background of maybe some of the characters in the sound bites. So then you have the resonance that's going out as well. I don't know, I'm just riffing. So
riffing's a good thing to do in these meetings. It's magic happens.
yeah.
What is like their sound superpower?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What does it do? What does that superpower do?
There's all that that essence of discovery, you know, people getting to test different sounds that feel good to them. And that's something I like to emphasize is that the different sounds do different things for different people. A lot of them have somewhat universal effects, but encouraging people to discover the sounds that have the most harmonious or balancing energy for them. And that's part of what I did in a set of workshops where I had people, as they got more comfortable using their voice, was like, okay, now discover and bring to a partner what sound has always felt really good to you, or something that's worked for you in the past, and they share it back and forth. And that was a risk, because they got to share something personal for them, and they got to try something else that had worked for another person, you know, directly from experience. And those ideas can come through, you know, like the cartoons that Andrea delivers, and get most powerful healing from what we can do for ourselves or produce from the inside. The healing is an internal practice that's supported by things from the outside. And yeah, there's so much possibility to introduce that notion into hospital or cultures in general. Yeah, it's really exciting.
Danielle?
I'm kind of just taking it in. I'm thinking of like what are the things that we know that does have some science with it, and like the humming has science with it. There's also some, like, I wonder, you know, if we can dig in a little bit deeper on music therapy research and look at, you know, this field that's already established, and how sound and rhythm, you know, like pull what we do know about rhythm, for example, and how that changes heart rates, and maybe that's something that, you know, could be like a meme in some way, like but then also kind of, I think too, like once some of these are created, we can also be strategic in like what is our campaign in a way. Like our campaign this month is soothing sounds, or this week is, you know, how can we empower you to ease anxiety and reduce stress, and we can use these types of, you know, slower beats per minute, and then like there can be a, you know, the scientific facts of maybe a brainwave state that's not like so overwhelming,
Yeah.
and so I think that there's not like so much specific research for sound, like crystal bowls specifically, or maybe Himalayan bowls specifically, but in terms of you know, BPMs, or you know, even the differences of high pitch sounds versus low pitch sounds, and how we feel those differently in our body, and maybe even the sound the sound bite portion is a lower pitch sound. So notice where you're feeling this in your body. Do you feel it, lower pitch sounds lower in your body? Do you feel higher pitch sounds higher in your body? But I like the storytelling of it, and I think it makes it accessible across many platforms. And I think it brings, one of the portals of the other portal of play into it. And I think that, there might be like that crossover too of how we can like, pull those things together. And I see like this educational piece, like this actually the comment. I don't draw. I'm a stick figure queen, but I don't know what it takes to, or like the length of time. Maybe this is something that we work on this week of storyboarding or creating the story of these educational pieces that we would like to share, and then figure out the costs of
An illustrator.
the illustrator, or and I keep, for some reason, I just keep coming back to website. Like we're like going to create a meme with a cool image that goes on our social media, and then we're drawing them back to something else. And so I think maybe we even start talking about collectively what is this portion of the website on for up game, like what is that going to cost, and time, and all of that, and include that in this project, because like I think the piece for me that I keep coming back to is it'll be really frustrating to pull together this really beautiful event with shakers and these memes and like all these things, and then not have something to invite people back to continue the conversation. And I think one of the cool things with the meme is that it'll help us continue the conversation. I think we probably need to get a social media. And what does the social media look like? What's the handle? Is it a Facebook? Is it an Instagram? Who maintains that? Who continues that conversation?
Yeah, and I think the other
Floating.
thing, like the tools that Lucian said that we have available to us, and how that can be used with, the creation of this as well. So use a lot of the open source that's available even from the website component. Like, where do we direct to it? Like, knowing those steps, I think, for all the portals or portal guilds, or sorry, technology portals in Alliance. It's been a long day. Longer for Lucian, probably. More games to be played, right?
It's been a long day, but no, I think, Andrea, that is it. It's like how can we connect the dots here, and start in a way that we know it's achievable. It doesn't, it's not a huge budget to go and say, okay, we're looking for an illustrator. The scope is come up with these characters, come up with these meme structures. That's probably a few $1,000s, and we could reward it in stars. So we can raise that money and reward it for that person, and 10% of that go back into the guild. So and then that person be able to immediately exchange those stars for dollars. So there's we like, let's start with what we know we can achieve, and if it's us only raising like $5,000-$10,000 as an alliance, that's like a great place to start. It's like it could be more, it's like what we need and what we're able to bite off and deliver on, I would say.
Yeah, because it's like what I'm kind of finding, or what I'm kind of seeing, is that everything kind of just needs to funnel back into each other. So it's like an atom. So it's like having that kind of spin effect of like, okay, this is being brought in to educate this to go back out, which then will go out to all the other portals, alliances, food. I mean, having an experience, you're going to probably have food there as well.
Exactly.
So anything that's bringing more pleasure and play, is, I think, going to be fair game.
And I had a quick thought on what we were saying about research, and there needing to be more, backed research. And then Danielle, you said something about play and play therapy. And correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not 100% sure about this, but I feel like there's been a decent bit of research on play therapy, and you have pitching sound as a way to access the play state could be a very strong in angle.
Yeah, there's a lot of research in the neuroscience of play therapy. Like, I know a lot of people in Colorado that are doing that and utilizing it. And I think, Lucian, I think you're aware of a lot of stuff within play therapy as well.
Yeah.
I live in play therapy.
No,
Yeah. Making that line really strong, that like when you're playing sound, you're doing the same thing. It's just, that seems like so available to me, because I know when I teach sound, I talk about play a lot. Mm-hmm. So that's a strong element to work with. So awesome to feel that.
Yeah, because everything continues with being replicatable. Like, we don't want them to just learn it or be in it just one time. It's like, I want to use it all the time. Dominic, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No. I was in trouble. My brain's switching on a bit more. I'm just thinking of the thing that keeps coming to me is just like initially simplicity. Like, really, it's how accessible it can be. One thing I've noticed, and one thing I always want to try and do, is encourage people to use their own voice, buy a bowl, empower themselves to use sound for themselves, so they don't need us as practitioners. And the uptake on that isn't as much as I'd hope. Some people really get into it, but it's funny, even though sometimes we know something feels good, we don't always do it, right? Mm-hmm. And that's across the board. Meditation, stretching, whatever, you name it, we're all kind of in that. So one part of it is simplicity. The other side of it is there's some really cool facts around sound that are kind of fun. So fun facts. That can lead into the deeper science as kind of that sort of trail of learning, and especially if you're working with schools and young people. So I don't know if anyone's sort of heard the thing they talk about, vets talk about, if you want to heal a broken leg, get a cat, because they purr at around about 40 hertz, which is apparently what helps bones to heal. Yeah. So there's a lot of interesting, ancient facts around sounds, like the pyramids and the sound chambers burn the pyramids. So we can kind of make it really simple and fascinating and catches people's attention. The other side of it, I feel, is like trying to bring in some, and I hate the 21-day challenge type scenario, but the reality of the habit of 21 days is real. So there's ways to bring in that aspect of, like, we're challenging you to try this. We're challenging you to try humming, for a minute a day or whatever. And so it's encouraging and trying to help people get into that mode, because it is difficult. As much as people love coming to a sound bath, they don't practice sound in between the sound bath necessarily. And I'm sure all of us have experienced that kind of work and have done that. And that's the next level that people start to go away from these sound experiences and whatever we create and design, that, by going home with a shaker, that's a start. By going home with some more information about why humming's good and how it becomes relatable to them. I always tell people about when you see those films when someone's walking through the dark forest and they're lost and they start humming, that it's a natural way of calming our nervous system. So just little things like that we can start to like catch people's attention in a very simple way. And then that leads into the curiosity, more science, or we can lead them into, deeper subjects.
Yeah, it's continuing the conversation. It's like every time you have a class, it's continuing the conversation that they come back to more. And what's their takeaways?
Well, I like that too, with the meme or the comic. I'm loving this more and more because it's also we're asking them to. It's almost like we are, we're holding the torch and kind of guiding them, but they get to take the journey however they want to take it because it's theirs. And so, like, I don't know where I'm going with that. Something there, I forgot. Like it dropped out of my head, but I think that the simplicity piece and the empowerment piece is I'm just echoing you guys.
Thank you.
I'm so tired. It's 9 o'clock here.
We can wrap up here. No, thank you so much, Danielle. And the echoing meme, we may be able to, like, something that the Sound Alliance might be able to do is come up with like an echo emoji, for example, something like that. Like an emoji could be a cool, like a bunch of sound emojis. That's a language, and so just all sorts of food for thought. Exactly. But let's we can wrap up and meet again tomorrow.
Yeah, I think it's probably a good idea because had a long day and based on what's happening in the world.
Great day, great day. So
I'm wondering what's like kind of like a thing to just kind of melt, like have sitting. Oh my gosh, words. What is something to think about tonight and tomorrow to kind of bring the conversation forward tomorrow to think about?
I would say, like, what is the one thing that you want the world to know about sound?
Beautiful.
Which can be like a huge thing, but like, what would you want to teach a 5-year-old? Because
What would be a good thing for people to grow up knowing? Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, it's like if I could go back to age 5, like what could I have learned in sound that I could have used now?
That's good.
And the just convergence of all the ideas that, again, that were discussed today, and how that can be promoted through the Unified Planet game and the independent channels that come from this.
Yeah, and I know that Joshua, since you're sitting on a couple of the other different alliances for food, any input for food with what sound?
Yes, and now community is going to be a big one for us as well in regards to sound.
Yeah,
there's a lot of opportunity with both, and then food to community, like, it's really, that's the momentum train that I can see from my perspective that feels really powerful. So I'll definitely have my ear to the ground on all of that, and when we rally back tomorrow, I'll have an update. Okay. Really daily going forward.
Awesome.
All right, let's get some dinner, man.
Yeah. Anyone want to do? Should we do a closing sound for a long day from 10:30? Emil? Anything you'd like to bring us through here as a closing sound?
Sure. I would love to just share some overtone singing.
Beautiful.
Some sacred frequencies that really turned me more in this direction because of how they made me feel. And let's all just breathe together for a moment to drop in and integrate everything that's happened. You can also let out a nice sigh. Close your eyes and feel into your body. Another sigh. Hoping to receive more and more clarity. Allow whatever it is to come through. Here we go. gratitude to everyone, ourselves included, for what we've created and are creating. And we'll go nourish our sleep times, our food times, and ready for a good start to the week.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Emil.
Thank you. That was
Thank
beautiful.
you.
everyone.
Beautiful. I love.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's so good to be with all y'all.
Yeah.
It's like family, man. We've gone weeks, and let's just keep going. I appreciate you guys. I love y'all.
Yeah. Yeah. Echoing that. Thank you so much. Really appreciate everyone. And until tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
Yeah, and we'll share the Google Doc, Andrea. Brian's been working on one. We'll share that. I think it's on the same one as last one, but
Okay.
you can correct. So, all right.
good.
Really appreciate everyone.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye bye. Thank you, Joshua. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.